Hey guys, so a few days ago, there was a post put up, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was one of those down the rabbit hole, uh, globalization, world control type of posts, and it was there to, uplift and to give people a bit of hope and encouragement to pull yourself out of that paradigm. And someone put in the comments, where it's a losing battle, like almost apologizing for, people, like this false sense of possibility of getting out. It's like, oh, I'm sorry, it's not going to work. It's a losing battle. You're not going to win, you know. And I know that feeling. I've been there many times. And yes, it is correct in certain terms, and that is if you're in a lower frequency, a lower energy level, yes, the game is rigged for you to lose. There is just no way you can win from inside the container, right? And this is the whole point of raising your energy, getting your energy up and out of that bandwidth, right? Is that when you're inside that bandwidth, no matter how you fight against it, no matter what you do in there, every movement you make inside that bandwidth has been rigged for you to lose. It's like, I remember when I was a kid, and making friends in the neighborhood, and pretty soon after a couple of weeks or a couple of months, you get to know everybody. And then a few months went by, and one of my new friends introduced me to this new friend, a kid down the street, and we went over to his place and started playing, and he had every toy you could possibly think of. I think I was less than 10 years old at the time, and I was like, how does no one know this kid? Like, he could have the whole neighborhood over here every single day playing with all these different toys, and inventing all these games to enjoy, and he's here in this virtual toy store by himself. Like, what's going on? And it didn't take long to realize that in playing games with this kid, is that he was so obsessed with winning that he sucked all the enjoyment out of playing, to the point where if he felt like he was losing, I mean, we were playing Hungry Hippos. I don't know if anyone remembers that game, Hungry Hippos. And if he felt that he was losing, then he would, grab the tokens from one player and put it in his, like blatantly in front of everyone, and say, I won. And it just got to the point where it was like, well, what's the point in playing if you just can't win, and the only thing left to do is to let you win? That's like, no wonder no one's coming over and playing games. And that's kind of how I look at this world control, is that yes, they want control, and yes, they don't want you winning, and yes, the game is rigged for you to lose. But when you start to raise your energy and you change the way you look at things, and you shift your paradigm, your thinking, what happens is that slight change is like turning the kaleidoscope. You get a whole different set of patterns that become obvious to you. And the whole idea of keeping you under control is not to like stop you growing and stuff like that. It's to stop you seeing other possibilities other than the ones that they are presenting to you. And so instead of getting upset, which I did in the beginning, instead of getting angry, which I did in the beginning, instead of trying to, fight back and lash out and get on my soapbox and rally people behind me, which I did in the beginning, which you probably did too, or have done, or are still in the process of doing, I suggest you let that go and you start to shift your perspective and move your awareness out of the trap of the rigged game. And when you do this, it's kind of like, this kid that, kept with the Hungry Hippos, that kept rigging every game, changing the rules midway through anytime he thought he was going to lose, is that eventually you just stop playing those games. You find other games to play with people that want to play for the sake of playing. It's not about whether you win or lose. It's how you play the game and how much enjoyment you get out of the game. And pretty soon those people are left to, their own devices. And as long as you don't fall into their traps, then they can't really touch you. Do you know what I mean? And so I put up a lot of these posts on finance and business, so you can find your ways around the slave trap of working, the 40-40-40 rule, 40 hours a week, 40 weeks a year for 40 years, retire on the pension and you die, sort of thing, to get you out of that and to get you into the mindset of being above the game, looking down on the game rather than inside it and getting churned up in the machine, right? Which many people, for ever since the recorded history of our time, have been caught up in. And yeah, it takes effort to get your mind out of there. It takes a lot of reorganizing of your life and changing of habits, but it is well worth it, because at least you have the choice now. Even if you have to participate in those stupid games, then you know what you're getting into, how long you've been in there, and you're looking for ways to get out of them again. And the other thing I did is I put up posts about the judicial system, the courts, and how it's all based on maritime law and corporate law, and these are all offers of contract. And if you combine that understanding of the legal system with business, and couple that with your imagination, then you can start to reinvent these new deals, right? You can start to think of deals that actually benefit you. And when you understand how these systems work, it's like, yes, these systems are rigged for you to lose, but if you understand the systems and the buttons and the levers and the strings and the pulleys, then you can actually use this system on itself, and to the point where, for them to rig the game so badly to prevent you from winning means the collapse of the system itself. So what they do is they just let you out, right? And they hope you'd never come back and don't talk to anybody about it. But the cat's out of the bag. When I first started this process, I think I was really getting into it. I think I was about 19. It was probably like, 1996, 97, something like that. And it was very lonely. Like, I was the only person that I knew, bar one other friend who I sort of introduced to these kinds of concepts, who was kind of sniffing around already looking for these answers to questions that were being downloaded. It was a very lonely process, because it was like the whole world's fucking asleep and you're the only one walking around awake in it. And I know that a lot of you feel like that right now, but let me tell you, it is vastly different from 20 years ago, 25 years ago, when the veil was so thick, the density of that band of frequency was like It was everywhere, and now what we're and no one could see it. No one really was aware. Now we see that it's everywhere. We see that it's everything, but we can see it, right? And now we can do something with it. And there are lots of people that I've never met before, that I've never spoken to, that are on sites that just pop up in my feed now because the algorithm, right, is working in my favor. And they're showing examples of them using these hacks, these energetic hacks, to get themselves out of this frequency and into a higher frequency or a different frequency other than that bandwidth of the third dimensional trap, right? And they're doing it calmly. They're doing it with no malice. They're doing it almost like it's a game, and that it reminds me of when I was when I'd go on holidays with school holidays, and I'd be with my mates down the road at say the fish and chip shop or the burger shop, and you'd be playing this arcade game, the only game that was there, right? You put your 20 cents in and you play for 5 minutes or 3 minutes or whatever it is. You got to keep feeding this machine constantly. And there'd be this one kid in the town that was just the master at this game. And and he'd be on the machine for ages, and you'd just be waiting and waiting and waiting. And it got to the point where he would just walk away from the machine and leave it alone because he had to go somewhere or got bored or whatever. You're thinking, what the hell's going on? And over time you figure out that he's got this cheat code, right? It's like move the stick left, right, up, down, press the first button, then the player 1 button, then move the stick in reverse, and then hit the player 2 button, and there's this pattern, and then it unlocks the game, and you're in God mode, right? And so this is what we're talking about, is when you raise your energy, you raise your frequency, your vibration, let's say, using the keywords that are out there now, and you shift your paradigm, your way of seeing the world ever so slightly, it opens up all these new possibilities, and you see through the magic trick. It's like, when you're a kid and you watch a magician, you're like, wow, it's magic, and then over time, as you grow up, you realize it's actually a trick, right? It's a sleight of hand. It's still very skillful, some of these tricks. Some of them are very sophisticated, and they're very in-depth, and they're so hard to see because the magician has been practicing them so long. And some of them are so big you can't see the edge of the container, right? And this is where we come into the idea of a matrix, and maybe it's not actually a simulation of computer code. Maybe our brains aren't in vats somewhere. Maybe we are actually here in these bodies walking around this physical plane. But the constructs of culture and society that we take for granted, like the financial system, like the legal system, like how the education system and how we're trained to think, religion, all those things. We grow up in them thinking that is the truth of how we should perceive the world, but it's only one way of thinking, and it's very elaborate, it's very large, it's on a mass scale. People are born into it. You're born into bondage, the saying goes. You're born into this frame of thinking, and we're taught that is all there is, but it's only one in the vast plethora of multiple timeline, multi-universe potential possibilities, right? We're talking infinite, right? It is so, and even if it's not infinite, there are so many possibilities that you in your conscious mind as a human being can't possibly fathom the number, right? The potentials of possibility are so great that, you know, just to think about it and to really focus on it will probably cause a bit of stress, right? So we just don't. And the way, the short track, you know, people are like, I want to save some time, I want to save some energy. What's the hack? How do I get out of it? The key is to go where you are told not to go, right? So that is your trauma, your having the uncomfortable conversations you know you should have, saying no to things that are not good for you, not eating the shit food, getting up off the couch and going and training and exercising and you know, exercise the demons, exercising your body, getting that energy out of your system so new energy can come in and update your system, right? Taking on new information, learning about things that are hard and difficult to learn, and only smart people, you know, get that sort of thing, and only lucky people have those experiences. Go and test the edge of things, you know. It's like in those the Superman movie, Man of Steel. What is it? You know, it's only until we test our limits that we know how far we can go, because often those limits are just mental barriers when you're actually there, just like fears, right? You know, oh, I'm afraid of this. Oh, I wouldn't do that because, you know, afraid, and oh, I don't know if I could ever do this. Well, how do you know if you've never stepped up to the line? I'm not saying you have to throw yourself in like, you know, recklessly, but one thing we did when I was training with the guys in the parkour community is we would go up to obstacles even if we knew we weren't able to traverse them, and we would stand on the ledge and look at them, right? And then we would feel the emotions that we were feeling, like fear of not being able to do it, or fear of, you know, making a mistake and potentially hurting yourself. We wouldn't do it, but we would go up there and look at these obstacles over and over again until eventually the emotion dissipated, and there was no emotional charge around the idea anymore. And then it was a matter of also building up the skill to do what you need to do to traverse the obstacle or the open space. And then when that was all set and ready, and the body was ready, and the emotions were balanced, and your mind was set, and you're all aligned, then you could start to work on overcoming that obstacle. And the funny thing is, and we've done this, you know, throughout our life in things we're supposedly good at now, which we weren't in the beginning, is that once we go beyond that barrier, it's like, you know, it looks as though that barrier is this huge Berlin Wall that's, you know, unable to be passed. But really, when we lean into it and we put a bit of pressure on it, that edge pops like a bubble, right? It's really only that thin. It's just a perception, you know, like the cheesecloth and the tiger story, if you've never heard that one, or, you know, the elephant on the chain. There's another one. If you haven't heard those stories, I can go into them in another video. But the whole thing, this whole, you know, unstoppable force that is rigged to keep us all in this container, the perception is it's impossible to get out, right? And if you were in control of that container, you would want people believing that, because, you know, like the Great Wall of China, there is only so much wall you can defend at once, you know. You know, if you look at some parts, you look at the documentary of the Great Wall, there's some parts where the wall, you can just step over it, right? Or they run out of material, you know, they're out in this desert, and you can just walk around, you can walk across, there's no wall there at all, right? But in the areas where people are more likely to want to pass, that's where the walls are so high and they're so defended, and it seems impossible. But we know, you know, all of these barriers, you know, these boundaries, these borders, these limitations, to some impossibilities, and to others they're toys for people to play with, right? And so it depends on how you look at this thing. Having said all that, though, to be able to have this perspective, one of the other keys is to find a place and space, create a space and time, give yourself time and space to be able to get out of the emotions of being inside the container. You need a place where you can go, whether it's a home or a place in nature, whatever it is for you, it doesn't matter, wherever you can, a place where you can go there and spend enough time there to let the emotions slow down until they come to a complete stop. You get into neutral and you can pull your mind out of that container into the void, so you can see all these other possibilities that are going on around you. There's a lot to this, obviously. It's not just you're going to get it all in this short video, but I just want you to know that, I can empathize with that feeling. There are times where it's like, man, this is just, doesn't matter what you do, it's not going to work. There's just too much against you. But that's exactly the frame of mind that I would want you to be in if I was in control of all those mechanisms, because I wouldn't want you fighting against them. I would want you just to accept that, yes, you're going to lose, and don't even bother trying and just do what I tell you to do. But you don't have to accept it. You really don't. And one thing that I've found repeatedly over and over again, and I'm not talking about breaking laws and hurting people and, being violent or anything. I'm just talking about once you understand the systems of these controls, then often they've got overrides, they've got bypasses. Once you raise your energy up and your awareness up to a certain level, there are things that you're no longer compelled to obey, right? For lack of a better term. There are so many examples. I'll talk about more in further videos, but I really hope that encourages you to find the exit. There are many, many exits. They're everywhere, okay, all the time. But you need to get your mind into a place where you can see them, right? And that's the key. When you can see them, it's like they're all over the place, and that is what they don't want you to know. Okay, hope that helps. Thanks for watching, thanks for your attention, and bye for now.